Right, well, welcome back to the workshop, and as you would have seen in the previous episode, all of the construction work now is complete on the Mandolin. It's had a coat of sanding sealer on it to protect it, to keep it clean, and we've now got to put the hardware on, make the bridge, and get it all set up. So yeah, let's get cracking, shall we? Right, so the first thing I want to do is make the bridge. Now, that's my ebony bridge blank, which obviously I've got to cut up and prepare into smaller billets for the bridge itself. As you know, my bridges have removable saddles, and I like to use tusk these days. Really good material for bridges and nuts. So yeah, let's get started. Right, so there's the piece of ebony flat, two edges squared up, and I'm just going to run that through my sander now to take it down to my desired thickness of 11 millimeters. Right, so that's the slot for the saddle done. I'm actually going to flip this piece of ebony over and do a slot on the other side, and then I've got one prepared for the next instrument. So that's the first step of making the bridge. The next thing I like to do is shape the underside of the bridge so it fits the soundboard perfectly. So this sanding block here is shaped to the same curve as the soundboard is, so the initial shaping of that can be done quite easily. So yeah, off we go. So as we get closer, I use my old white pencil trick, and of course you need to check that you're not leaning to one side, that the base is square to the edges. So I've got the curve that I want on the bottom of the bridge there. Now there's always this debate, should the bottom of the bridge make full contact across the soundboard, or should there be some kind of relief, some kind of gap in the middle and it be sitting on feet? As I say, there's always a debate about that, and one which I'm not willing to enter. The method that I prefer is to have a gap, and really I take my lead from violins. As you can see on a typical violin bridge, the bridge is just sitting on these 2 feet, and the idea is that this foot rests on the bass bar on the belly of the violin, and I kind of carry on that theory with mine, so that the feet, if you like, on my bridge will be sitting above where the main braces are on my soundboard. You know, let's face it, these guys, Stradivari, etc., they got it right a long time ago, didn't they? And who am I to argue? Right, so this simple template allows me to position the bridge accurately. I've only roughly sanded the bottom of this, and I'll use a feeler gauge to see how good it fits. So it's okay there, bit of a gap there, and a bit of a gap there. So clearly I need to refine this to fit perfectly to this particular soundboard. Okay, so now we're going to use that abrasive paper very, very gently to try to get this to its so it should go there, and yeah, tight there. Oh yeah, that's better, isn't it? That is much better. Tad, a little bit of a gap at the front there, so another few minutes and that should fit perfectly. Right, so a while later, after some patient sanding, always apply pressure down because obviously you've got the strings pushing down on the bridge, and much better. You can see that feeler gauge doesn't fit in there, so yeah, I can confidently say that bridge is now fitting all the way along these two portions here, and I can get on with the rest of the shaping of the bridge, which is really about it losing weight. So the bridge is completed now. Obviously the saddle needs to be taken down to height and shaped for intonation, etc. So obviously the bridge goes there. The next step is to make the nut, and again I'll be using this this tusk material, and I like to buy these slabs which enable you to get a couple of nuts out of one piece. So yeah, that's the next bit, filing filing tusk, the man-made ivory. So I'm just going to put the tuners on there, and what I currently like using are these mini Goto guitar tuners, fully enclosed, and they just seem to be incredibly smooth and reliable. The only downside is because they're guitar tuners, you buy 4 guitar sets, i.e. 24 tuners, and that yields you 3 mandolin sets. So that's to say the only downside I can think of for using these. But no. So having pre-drilled all of these tuner holes before the neck was glued on makes it so much easier at this stage, you know, because you'd be drilling the holes probably by hand at this awkward angle, and maybe the whole thing rocking about. So that earlier step helps enormously now. And the thing to remember is that these screws are really there to stop the tuner from rotating. What holds the tuner down firmly in place is the screwing bush. Okay, 2 down, 6 to go. So over the years I've tried lots of different towel pieces, but I've eventually found these ones made by Prucha, if that's how you pronounce it, made in the Czech Republic, and they really are in a class of their own. The base part is stainless steel, the top nickel plated brass, and of course I like to cut and modify that cover. But one of the outstanding things about this is that the covers actually fit, which isn't always the case. So yeah, very happy to use and recommend these towel pieces. Time to mark out the nut for the string slots. So the 8th string I like to have 2.75 from the edge of the nut. So I set my calipers at that and then make a mark, and I've sharpened my pencil so that the tip of it is like a chisel, so it rides right up against the the end of the caliper there. 0 that, and then increase it by 2.5 for the 7th string. So with either end marked out, I use my string spacing rule to mark out the kind of intermediate ones, if you like. So the idea using this type of rule is that the strings or the slots, they're not equally spaced. All the slots get wider towards the base side as the diameter of the strings gets thicker, which obviously makes sense, much more sense than trying to do them all equally. I very much regard this as a kind of a first fix, if you like. Mark out the slots, cut the slots with a saw, and then use the various nut files to enlarge them to take the various string gauges. And then the final adjustment for the action height at the nut will be done when I've got the strings on, and that's my, if you like, my final fix. So I'm just working on the saddle now, and the procedure for marking out where the strings will go for the saddle is exactly the same really as for the nut. The only thing that I do differently at this stage is roughly file the saddle to compensate for the intonation. And as I said before, this is really very much so my first fix, so I'll get it roughly shaped, and then the final shaping can't really take place until the action is sorted, because the height of the strings governs really how much the strings stretch, and therefore how much compensation there needs to be for the intonation. Well, I'm at the stage now where I'm going to set up the action. I only use 4 strings at this stage, simply because it's so tight to try to work on all 8 strings at the same time. What you can do is, for example, file the slot for the 8th string, get the action sorted out on the 8th string, and then you can lift that string out into the slot for the 7th string and work on that one, and the same obviously right the way across. So the way I proceed is I put a millimetre shim where the 12th fret is, push it down, that's the kind of action I want there, and then I can measure the gap with the feeler gauge and lower it by filing the depth of the slots in the nut. So yes, I'm going to be spending a fair time doing that, and I'll show you when I've finished. Right, so I press down there, try my feeler gauge, which is set at 0.28 of a millimetre for these G strings, and that's spot on. So now that string goes into there, and I repeat the process. So at this stage I'm happy with the action at the nut at the 1st fret there. So what I'm going to do now is turn my attention to the saddle, and really it's a kind of reverse process. Again, I'll measure the distance at the 12th fret, the action at the 12th fret, and cut these slots a little bit deeper until I'm at the right action there. And then once that's done, I'll put the other 4 strings on, let the whole thing settle down for a day or two, and then, and only then, when I'm satisfied that everything's settled nicely, the action's correct at both ends, when I then tackle the final tweaking of the intonation. So some gentle filing, string back in the slot and measure the gap. Just a tad more. And what you've got to remember is that whatever you want to lower the action by here, you've got to do it twice as much there. So as I say, I need to lower that a tad, so I need to lower that 2 tads. The mandolins settled down overnight, so I'm happy with the action. The intonation's pretty good as well, as it happens. A couple of the notes are a little bit sharp, so all of that involves is filing the saddle so the string breaks a little bit further back. And before I take the saddle out and move the bridge, I just need to measure it to make sure that when I put the bridge back in position, it goes in exactly the right place. I know I've got a bit of tape there, but you know, I like to make sure that everything is double checked. Right, well, as you can see, it's pretty much done, isn't it? It's set up, playing really nicely, and I must admit, I'm very pleased with the way it's sounding at the moment. I mean, it's been strung up fully for half an hour, half an hour or so, and you know, I get people emailing me a year, 2 years after they've had their mandolin saying, oh, the mandolin's really opening up nice, it's really sounding great. So at this moment in time, I'm incredibly pleased with the way this little mandolin is sounding. Right, so what's next? Well, I've got a few bits to tidy up. I've got to make the cover for the towel piece, drill a hole for the strap pin, a few bits and pieces like that, and then I'll give it a good old sand down yet again and apply the finish. And really that whole finishing process is going to take 3, maybe 4 weeks. So you won't be seeing me for a while because I'll be busy finishing this mandolin. But until the next time, you take care, and yeah, I'm going to see you pretty much soon with a finished mandolin. So once again, many thanks for all your interest, and yeah, you take care. Cheers then.